Hello, ladies and gentlemen out there. I want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in over here again, here at Pepe's Point of View. I'm your host, your R&B historian, Pepe, and I want to welcome you new viewers, you returning viewers, and you subscribers. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in over here. I hope you're putting your behind where your heart desires to be. That's my motto over here. It's very simple. And I also hope that you are taking care of yourselves while you're out taking care of others. Please take care of you as well. I pray that you take care of yourselves just as much as you are taking care of others. And while you're doing all of that, and when it comes time to you, I pray that you have the energy to take care of yourself. I pray that you have the mindset to take care of yourself. I pray that you don't put yourself on the back burner, but that you bring yourself up to the forefront and you make sure that you take time for yourself. And I'm not just talking about something simple as, fellas going to the barbershop and getting, cut up, and ladies going to the hairdressers and, getting, your hair done and all of that stuff. Those things are great and we need to take care of ourselves and our appearances. But I'm talking about taking care of you, your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit. Take care of you. Make sure that you're right on every end of your life. Take care of you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I told you that I would eventually get around to talking about Frankie Beverly and Mays. I'm going to try to stay current, with some of these trending topics. I know that Frankie Beverly passed in September of this year. Um, and I think it was September the 10th. September the 10th is when he passed. And obviously, there's some time lapse in that. But, as I said before, I have a lot of things on my calendar that I do want to discuss and talk about. And when I get around to doing it, um, I will get around to doing it. I want you guys also to understand that, yes, I am making a lot of things top priority, as well as this channel, but I have a lot of things on the back end that I am also working on. So trust me, when you don't see me over here, I'm working. I'm working diligently, getting some things done. And sometimes that requires you to, be busy behind the scenes. It's the things behind the scenes that we don't, see. But trust me, I thank you guys so much for hanging in there with me. Having said all of that, getting back to Frankie Beverly and discussing Frankie Beverly, I said in the video that I uploaded about Quincy Jones, I was saying, hey, as I am getting older, that means that, the entertainers that I um, watched on television, if it was in a movie, the actors and actresses, or whether if it was the singers, the R&B, my R&B divas, or my soul men, or what have you, my pop divas, you know, they're getting older as well. So to see some of my favorite, entertainers, as I say, get up out of here. you know, uh, there goes my childhood. There goes my, generation of entertainment, of art. And I have to tell you, as you're getting older, you think about you being young and looking at your parents as they're, kind of dated, if you will, like they're not up with the times, and they're talking about, oh, back in my day, it was this, it was that. And well, I can't believe I'm getting to that point in my life where I'm saying those things, so I'm like, whoa, But anyway, oh my gosh, it was a wonderful era of music, you know. So here I am, Frankie Beverly and Mays. So let's go ahead on and get right into it. For those of you out there who are just now checking me out, let's just talk about what it is that I do over here so you guys can kind of understand how it flows. Well, I love music. I love music. I love any kind of music. Okay. And primarily I talk about my favorite genre of music, which is R&B, my favorite singers, which would be R&B divas. But I just don't cover them and just focus on them. I like to cover artists, just entertainers, period. And so what I do is that I just pretty much to sum it all up, I do music reviews. That's what I do. I go back and I listen to my artists' favorite. I listen to some of my favorite artists again. Some of the music I have personally myself, and then I have to go out and look for the music in this day and time to, listen to it again. Back in my day when I was growing up, and probably like most of you, we listened to music because we wanted to buy it, because we loved it. It sounded good. It was a hit record, so on and so forth. And so now, as I've gotten older and as I do this, I am becoming more appreciative of the of music, period. So now when I listen with a different intention. I just listen to music just to really see, what the artist wanted to convey, how I feel about it, what I get out of the music. I don't necessarily listen to other music critics out there, and it's not that I don't like those music critics, because I have some favorites. It's just that what I want to do is just make sure that I hone my own skills, as well as come up with my own mind frame about things. And it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just my perspective. It's my point of view. And so that's pretty much what we're doing here. And what I do is I take it and, well, I kind of mix it up. I kind of serve my own, you know, a meal, with this. So who knows what I come up with? It's a flow for me. Not only is it a flow for me, I just kind of, it's what I do. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God. What I do over here is it's like songwriting. If you think about the songwriting, what do? You have an idea in mind. Kind of like I I sit and I chill out for a moment, get my thoughts together. What angle do I want to go with this? And I sit back and I think about the angle that I want to go with it, pull some things together. And then I'm like, okay, I think I have a conversation in my head. I have a conversation in my spirit, my mind, my body, my soul, my spirit. I have a conversation. I can pull off something, if you will. And so then it's kind of like a songwriter, when they're looking for that song, and it's like, all right, hey, you can say to your Lord and Savior, some people can say the music gods, shine on them and deliver that song to them. And that's kind of like what I do. I just sit back and chill out, and I just say, okay, where am I going with this, this particular review? And I'm pleasantly surprised sometimes as to how everything turns out, if you will. So that's pretty much what I do, my fancy way of doing my own personal music reviews and album reviews. And every now and then I might dish out the dirt on who dropped kicked who in these entertainment streets, literally and figuratively speaking. Well, how about if we just continue to talk about Frankie Beverly? Yes, Frankie Beverly and Maze. Now, speaking of dishing out the dirt, I think it's safe to say we can start here. I did a video on Frankie Beverly and Maze, probably about a year ago. And in that video, I talked about the fact that Frankie Beverly and the band Maze were splitting. And of course, we all are aware of the fact that the two went their separate ways. And there was a lot of controversy as to why, or a lot of speculation, I should say, why they were splitting, and what have you. And so we'll leave those speculations where they are. And when I have to be the first one to admit, when I heard about this, I was saying to myself, I hope everything is good with Frankie. And now that I'm looking back on it, I'm wondering if he possibly also decided to the band and he decided to, go their separate ways. Who knows? Maybe, Frankie Beverly was, getting his house in order. You just never really know and saying, hey, you know, I think I'm done with this, and who knows? But whatever the reason why as to his passing and the band splitting up, they split up, but they split up. And I have to tell you that, you know, the band, Frankie, Beverly, Mays, both of them, individually and collectively, they definitely have a prolific catalog. And so when I think about Frankie Beverly and Mays, and I can only speak for myself, I like to speak about my own personal experiences. And when I think about Frankie Beverly and Mays, the first thing that comes to mind when I think about think about Frankie Beverly and Mays is cookouts. Okay, I think about cookouts. I think about gatherings. I think about barbecues. I think about my mother and my dad and my aunts and uncles and my uh, relatives, their in-laws, everyone just getting together, on a Friday evening and pretty much just hanging out together and hearing Frankie Beverly and Mays, being played, you know, at the gatherings, the card games and all of that stuff. Frankie Beverly's music, amazing Frankie Beverly's music was definitely, played a major role, in my household, in my upbringing. And so that's what I thought about when I thought about Frankie Beverly and Mays, or when I think about Frankie Beverly and Mays. Now, I had the opportunity, and we're going to talk about two albums in particular over here. And the first album that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about what is that album? We're going to talk about, of course, the one you see here, which would be Back to Basics. We're going to talk about that album. That album is the album that I actually own. Out of all the Frankie Beverly and Mays' albums, the one that I own would be Back to Basics. I like that record. It was a good record. I love it. And the other album that I listen to would be the Silky Soul album. So these are the two albums that I'm going to talk about for this particular review. And so here you have, here, as I said before, a prolific catalog of music. Mays and Frankie Beverly to me is one of those groups, of course, that uh, regardless if they had a hit record or not, they had a loyal following, or the band has a loyal following, you know. And so they were always what we would call a touring band. Excuse me, a touring band, right? They were always on the road, always touring, and they had a loyal following, with that. It wasn't until, and I have to admit, I guess this is a little bit of, some entertainment, dishing out some dirt. There was, it seems as if some people were speculating that when Charlie Wilson of the Gap Band, when his career was revived, if you will. There was some talks that, uh, we're not going to say there was tension between Frankie Beverly and Charlie Wilson, but there were some people speculating that there were definitely, how can I put it? Some competition there. Competition as far as maybe, how I want to say it. There was no how can I put it? There was no tension as far as verbal or physical tension, but it was one, as I would say, a popularity. If I recall, there was a time when, like I said, Charlie Wilson was, his career was, re-emerging, that Frankie Beverly and Maze's, audience, these two were not comfortable being on the same bill. I put it that way. And there was some speculation that it was more Frankie Beverly's part. That's just what, was being said, at one point in time. Uh, but that's alleged. Y'all making me tired. You're making me tired over here. So let me put up the alleged that there was some speculation around there. But for the most part, Maze and Frankie Beverly's, career, their core audience was intact. And you guys should know by now, those of you who do listen to me, that my favorite music years would be 1988, 89, and 90. And it was 1989, Frankie Beverly and Maze released their last album that I know of, Back to Basics, a gold album for them again, and they do have several of those. And that was pretty much it. That was their exit album. And you could say that they ended on, a high note. I love the album Back to Basics. I do. My favorite song on the album, though, will probably be What Goes Up. I like that song on the album, and we'll talk about that, of course. Don't Want to Lose Your Love. I like that album. Uh, and, of course, Laid Back. Girl. But when I think about Frankie Beverly and Maze, and I think instead of talking about the albums, I'm just gonna tell you what I got out of listening to these two albums. So I'm gonna combine this. I won't be long with you at all. We at the 15-minute mark anyway. So let me just go ahead on and wrap this up. What I personally feel about Maze and Frankie Beverly, or Frankie Beverly for that part. The first thing, as I said, to come to mind would be my parents playing, cards and listening to Frankie Beverly, as they were playing cards and barbecuing. But when I think about Frankie Beverly and listening to these two albums and listening, to Frankie Beverly's voice, what I get out of Frankie Beverly is, out of his voice, is hope and love, is what comes to mind when I hear Frankie Beverly. His music, his voice, there was hope and love in his voice, in his falsetto, right? And that falsetto, that tenor, voice of his, hope and love. And his music moves and inspires, right? Or I would say there's hope, there's love, there's movement and inspiration in his voice and in his music. How about that? It's the kind of music that you can clean up to, relax to, travel to, make love to. You can throw a party to his music. And then when I was listening to the Silky Soul album, the single Silky Soul, or the song Silky Soul, reminded me, for whatever reason, of Mercy, Mercy Me. That track reminded me of Mercy, Mercy Me. But you also get a sadness in a moodiness in his voice. And also in his voice, if you think about it, we know that he sings well, but you get every bit of emotion out of Frankie Beverly's voice. I mean, he sings with all feelings. He sings all the feelings. When I was telling you about hope and love and inspiration in his music, like all of those feelings and more, it's in him. He talks about loss, or he sings about loss. He sings about regret. Frankie Beverly wanted you to check yourselves. He wanted us to check ourselves, and he wanted us to change our ways. Is what I get out of his music. You know, and it's the good part about it, listening to it now, and if we want to go the church religious route or the spiritual route in it, you don't necessarily have to sing the gospel, if you will, to feel that. And that's what I get with Frankie Beverly and Mays. I feel it. I feel it in every fiber of my being. I mean, it definitely oozes through my ears. And I think that's the reason why we love him so much. His music, we talk about people's music touching us, but I can clearly say that his music brought people together. It brought people together. Yeah, other artists did the same thing, and they may have had a message in their music as well, but that's what I get from Frankie Beverly. I get that out of Frankie Beverly. I think with these two albums, Silky Soul and Back to Basics, is he may have abandoned the sound of Maze, that traditional sound of Maze on the Back to Basic albums. He probably tried to hip it up a little bit, for the most part, but everything was there. And some people say, I was reading reports as I was talking about him, in his passing. It was reported that he died of a heart attack. That's how he passed. Um, you know, and of course he was 77 years of age. But he definitely ended, as I said before, on a high note with the Back to Basics album. Even though the album was served up kind of different, it like I said, it was a little more hip, a little more up tempo, current, if you will. Um, he abandoned the traditional Maze sound a little bit on his last record. He did. Yeah, definitely that. I think, of course, though, my favorite song of all times, and I have a lot of favorite songs by him, but of course, my favorite song would be Joy and Pain. I just love it. I love the song. What it says, love can be bitter, love can be sweet. Yeah. But there's a line that I love, and I know you guys love it as well, and I'm gonna end it on this note. That line in Joy and Pain when he says, uh, "Where there's a flower, there's the sun and the rain," and I believe it goes something like, "Oh, but isn't it wonderful? They're both one and the same." Yeah, and there's another line in that song, talking about there will be someone or something that you will endure. Let me hold on for a second. I want to do it justice. Uh, I want to do it justice now that I'm trying to think of the lyrics of that song. Um, Love can be bitter, love can be sweet. Sometimes devotion and sometimes deceit. The ones that you care for give you so much pain. Oh, but it's all right. They're both one and the same. And then, as I said before, the other one, over and over, you can be sure there will be sorrow, but you will endure. Where there's a flower, there's the sun and the rain. Oh, but it's wonderful. They're both one and the same. Oh yeah, Frankie Beverly. See, that's what I'm talking about. You get schooled, if you will. Frankie Beverly probably was like Betty Wright when it came to that common sense approach, that wisdom. Betty Wright would throw that wisdom out to you, about life. She would, give you that life wisdom. And that's what I get when I think of Frankie Beverly. I get that common sense, approach, to life. You can learn something if you sit down and you just listen and shut up, right? Well, anywho, that's the 25-minute mark. And if you made it this far in this commentary, I want to say again personally, thank you guys so much. I think it's appropriate for me to go ahead on and say to you guys, hey, if you made it this far, I think that you like me. Right? I think you want to hang out with me. So I think it's appropriate for me to say, go ahead on and hit that like button, that subscribe button, the share button. Yes, do that for me, please. Also, too, remember my motto over here is simple: put your behind where your heart desires to be. And anytime I leave my mother's presence, she says to me, baby, remember, I love you, but God loves you best. I look forward to seeing you next video. And until then, you should know what to do by now. Take care of yourselves. All right.